Have you ever carried that quiet, nagging sense that life is slipping away? No matter how many tasks you complete, how many people surround you, or how many goals you chase, deep down there's a hollowness, a feeling that you're existing, not truly living. Maybe you've labeled it as anxiety, maybe a doctor has called it depression. Perhaps you've even been given pills to suppress the ache, a tablet in the morning, another before bed. Time passes, and with it, the voice inside you grows more muffled. But what if I told you that this discomfort isn't an error, that it's not meant to be silenced, but to be heard? Carl Gustav Jung, one of the most profound thinkers in depth psychology, argued that what we dismiss as mental illness is often not sickness at all. It's the psyche trying to repair itself, a warning signal that the way you're living is betraying your soul. Maybe you're caught in a career that drains you, in relationships that suffocate you, pursuing ambitions that were never truly yours. Meanwhile, something deep within is crying out for liberation, but no one ever taught you how to listen. On the contrary, you were taught to suppress, to comply, to adapt, to keep the peace. So you break down silently while the world applauds your productivity. Jung challenged this. For him, healing didn't come from denial, it came from facing the truth. It wasn't about numbing symptoms, but deciphering their message. Jung once said that neurosis is always a substitute for real suffering. In other words, your illness is born from avoiding the pain that could transform you. As long as you keep running, the suffering will remain. This isn't a message for those looking to distract themselves. It's for those who are exhausted from pretending, for those who feel like they're sinking, yet still hold a flicker of hope. Because there is a way out, but it starts with the radical choice to stop escaping and start listening. Listening to your soul, to your unconscious, to the pain you've tried to drown in routines, substances, or pills. If you've made it this far, maybe you already sense that the emptiness inside isn't weakness. It's the absence of your own presence in your life. And it's time to reclaim it. Perhaps you've been carrying sadness for weeks, months, maybe longer. You sit in a doctor's office, explain the insomnia, the chest tightness, the sense of not belonging. He nods, taps the keyboard, and quickly gives his verdict: anxiety. A prescription follows. In a matter of minutes, your soul's cry becomes a chemical equation. What few will tell you is that this treatment doesn't care about your essence. It only cares about restoring your function, because the system demands that you keep producing, buying, enduring. Medication helps you tolerate the unbearable, and that's why it's sold as a solution. But Jung warned, this is a trap. He believed that modern neuroses rarely arise from broken brains, but from the rift between the life you live and the life you should be living. Ignore your calling, your instincts, your deepest truths, and your soul revolts. Since it has no voice, it speaks through the body and the mind, anxiety, panic, despair. But instead of hearing the message, we are trained to drown it in chemicals, to return to normal. But what is normal? A job that suffocates you. Empty relationships that exist only for appearances. Goals that don't fulfill you. Routines that slowly erase who you are. That unease you feel is not failure. It's your soul whispering, like, this is not my life. Ignore it too long, and the whisper becomes a scream. But the system is always ready, with another label, another pill, another sedative. The more you conform, the further you drift from yourself, until you feel nothing at all, not joy, not sorrow, just a numb routine, often called adulthood. Jung warned that medicating symptoms without understanding their roots creates an illusion of healing. You might look fine on the outside, but remain lost within. Over time, this split between what you feel and what you live leads to collapse, because the soul always demands its due through burnout, breakdowns, or an emptiness nothing can fill. The epidemic of over-medication reflects something deeper, a society that fears suffering, that denies pain its transformative role. For Jung, pain wasn't a curse, it was the beginning of the journey. It was the invitation to individuation. But our culture pathologizes discomfort and by doing so robs us of the chance to become who we truly are. So we must ask, how many lives are wasted under treatments that only cover up the truth? How many voices silenced in the name of stability? How many paths abandoned before they even began? To answer, we must look beyond individual symptoms and examine the very structures we live in. Because maybe the problem was never you. Maybe it's the world that conditioned you to despise yourself. That's what we'll explore in the next part. Let's dive deeper. Why is it that so many people today suffer emotionally, even while surrounded by comfort, technology, and freedoms? We live in an era of endless entertainment, infinite information, constant stimulation. Yet paradoxically, we've never felt so disconnected from ourselves. The root of our pain isn't only in the mind, it's in the world that shapes us. Carl Jung saw this clearly. For him, the issue wasn't just personal, it was cultural, structural. We are born into a society that prizes image over essence, efficiency over soul. From childhood, we are handed a script. Study hard, pick a stable career, produce endlessly, consume constantly, smile for photos, hide your weaknesses. We are trained to compete, to please, to achieve. But no one teaches us to listen to our intuition, to understand our feelings, to ask, what actually makes life worth living? This absence of meaning is not accidental, it's built into the system. We are conditioned to believe our identity comes from the outside, from the title on a business card, the money in a bank account, the approval of others. But Jung knew this was fatal. Because if your self-worth depends on external validation, you will always be fragile, and more importantly, you will drift away from your true nature, your unconscious, your soul. That is how emptiness spreads. Quietly, steadily, it infiltrates your routine. You tick all the boxes, meet every expectation, but still feel out of place. You feel as though you're living someone else's life. Something is wrong, but you cannot name it. What you're experiencing isn't weakness, it's disconnection. Disconnection from what is instinctive, authentic, alive. Jung believed this rupture fuels our deepest psychological struggles, and society has no interest in you noticing this, because disconnected people are easier to control. They buy more, question less, follow rules without resistance. They're convenient, compliant, predictable. And when they finally break down, when anxiety, depression, or burnout overwhelms them, the system responds with quick fixes, never with truth. Jung insisted that true healing requires confronting the very culture that wounded you. It means uncovering what you suppressed, what you sacrificed to be accepted, what parts of yourself you betrayed just to belong. This is not an easy path. It requires admitting that much of the life you lived wasn't yours, that you shaped yourself to fit a mold that suffocated you, that you were tamed by a culture terrified of the human soul. But this is also the doorway out. Only by naming the source of your emptiness can you begin to fill it with what is real. And this journey has a name, individuation. Jung described it as the deepest and most transformative process of healing. In the next part, we'll explore what it truly means to individuate, how to reclaim the forgotten pieces of yourself, and finally, build a life that is yours. There comes a moment when pain can no longer be ignored, when the mask you wear becomes too heavy, when you realize you are only half alive, or worse, a hollow caricature of who you might be. According to Jung, it is at this breaking point that the most important journey begins, the journey of individuation. But what does it really mean? Jung wasn't talking about trendy self-help tips or minor habit changes. He described an almost mythic process where you cease being a reflection of others, your family, your culture, society's expectations, and begin to embody who you truly are. Individuation is the path toward inner wholeness. It begins the moment you stop living by other people's standards and start listening to the call of your soul. It isn't linear, nor is it comfortable. It's messy, painful, transformative, because it forces you to confront all you've ignored, buried, or denied within yourself. Here, the personal unconscious rises. Old wounds you never healed, desires you suppressed, beliefs you inherited without questioning. Individuation begins when you face these shadows instead of fleeing them. And soon you reach the hardest step, the confrontation with the shadow itself, that raw, instinctive, chaotic side of you that you've hidden from the world. The rage you never expressed. The envy you pretend not to feel. The urges that shame you. Jung said, "Those who look outside dream. Those who look inside awaken." To look inside is to face your shadow without disguises, without excuses, without moral filters. Why is this so vital? Because what you refuse to acknowledge will control you in secret. But once integrated, the shadow becomes a source of strength, authenticity, vitality. Only when you reconcile with yourself fully can you live truly. Individuation is this return to inner unity, this reconnection with the self, the deep center of the psyche, the wholeness you are capable of becoming. And here lies the irony. While the world tells you to improve yourself, Jung insisted that you don't need to be better, you need to be whole, not perfect, but real, not obedient, but free. Healing doesn't mean fitting more smoothly into the system. It means aligning your inner world with your true being. This path can be lonely and grueling, but it is the only path that grants meaning. Because when you live from your center, everything changes, your choices, your relationships, even your suffering. Pain stops being punishment and becomes transformation. But here's the question: why do so many people stay far from this journey? Why do they remain anesthetized, repeating the same patterns, avoiding their own souls? The answer lies in modern suffering, the silent epidemic of meaninglessness. This is what corrodes people from within, even those who appear to have it all. Jung saw that much of human suffering springs from this brutal realization. Life has lost its meaning. And by meaning, we don't mean a cosmic mission or unreachable dream. We mean living in alignment with who you are, not who society wants you to be. Jung noticed that when patients began to live meaningful lives, their symptoms often faded. Not after new pills, not after more money, but after they found a why. Because if you know why you live, you can endure almost any pain. Without that, even pleasures feel empty. And that's exactly our crisis today. An epidemic of emptiness. People exhausted not by too much work, but by too little purpose. Lives cluttered with commitments, but barren of direction. Jung believed humans need to feel part of something larger, to know their existence matters. Without that, collapse is inevitable. Suffering becomes disorientation. The soul cries out for meaning, but society responds with distractions, likes, series, self-help fads, productivity hacks. Yet none of it fills the void, because the void exists for one reason. Many are living lives they never chose. They walk paths meant to please others but betray themselves. They take jobs misaligned with their values. They stay in relationships that drain them. They live in environments that suffocate them. Day after day, they repeat routines that erase them, and the body eventually rebels. The mind collapses. The soul withers. No drug can cure a lack of meaning, because what's missing is not serotonin, it's direction. Not dopamine, it's identity. That's why Jung's depth psychology is so urgent. He didn't want people to just function. He wanted them to live authentically, with the courage to say, "This life is not mine, and I will not continue like this." But how do you rebuild meaning when everything around you pushes you away from yourself? Jung's answer: through the unconscious. It is in the forgotten, hidden parts of you that your true purpose lies. The unconscious is not only a vault of trauma, it is a reservoir of creativity, vitality, and truth. What you avoid is often what you most need. That's what we'll explore in the next part, how the unconscious, far from being an enemy, can become your greatest ally in healing. Because maybe what terrifies you most is exactly what you must face to finally live with meaning. If this resonates, check out my ebook, Beyond the Shadow. It distills Jung's core ideas into practical tools for deeper self-understanding. Link in the pinned comment. Most people want healing, but very few accept the cost. True transformation doesn't start with affirmations or new habits. It starts with confrontation, with dissent, with diving into the depths of your own soul. That's what Jung taught. There is no healing without the unconscious. But what is the unconscious? For Jung, it wasn't just a vault of repressed memories. It was a vast symbolic universe holding all you've abandoned, your instincts, your fears, your truths. Everything you tried to forget waits there. Why does this matter? Because what you ignore in the unconscious ends up steering your life. Jung said, "What you do not bring to consciousness returns as fate." You think you're unlucky in love, but you're repeating patterns. You think you're sabotaged at work, but you're unconsciously afraid of success. You think the world victimizes you, but it's your unhealed wounds directing your path. The unconscious is like a dark mirror. It shows who you really are, not who you wish to be. And that's why it frightens us. It exposes the lies of the masks we wear, forces us to face truths that sting, demands that we surrender the illusion of control. But here lies the paradox. The more you run from it, the more it enslaves you. The more you face it, the freer you become. Jung called this the expansion of consciousness, a process that begins only when you stop running and start listening. How do you listen? Through dreams, symbols, art, silence, therapy. The unconscious doesn't speak in logic, it speaks in images, emotions, sensations. And what you hear isn't nothing, it's you, the part of you that's been locked away, waiting for recognition. When you start listening, everything shifts. You see yourself more clearly, you understand your choices, you embrace your wounds. Most importantly, you reclaim your power, because until you know what lives inside you, you remain a prisoner of others, of culture, of your past. But when you dare to descend into the unconscious, you break free. You see that anxiety isn't an enemy, it's a message. That sadness isn't a weakness, it's a signal that something must end for something new to begin. This path is demanding. It takes time, patience, courage. It forces you out of the shallow comfort of the surface, but it's the only path that leads to authenticity. And from authenticity, life is rebuilt, not as a puppet of unconscious forces, but as the conscious creator of your destiny. Now that we understand the role of the unconscious in pain and transformation, we must ask, what keeps so many from starting? Why, even with this awareness, do people stay frozen, living on autopilot, repeating lifeless patterns? The answer is fear. Fear of change, of loss, of letting go of the familiar, even if the familiar is destructive. In the final part, we'll face this fear and the most difficult, liberating choice you'll ever have to make. The choice to stop wasting your life. Because at the end of the day, you either remain numb or you awaken. There is no middle ground. Eventually, life brings you to a threshold, not just another decision, but the decision, the one that separates who you are from who you were told to be, the one that decides whether you keep living a borrowed, anesthetized life or finally pledge loyalty to your soul. If you've followed this far, it's not by chance. Something inside you is stirring. It may whisper, it may roar, but it's there. And it won't leave because it comes from the truest part of you. The part that refuses to accept that life is nothing more than chores, obligations, and distractions. That part knows, without being able to explain, that there's more waiting for you. But it reveals itself only when you dare to walk toward yourself. Jung said the greatest privilege of life is to become who you truly are. And yet, it is the path most avoided, because it demands that you release the comfortable, the predictable, the shallow. It demands that you face deep fears, meet your shadows, question everything you were taught as truth. That is why the path is sacred, because it transforms, it heals. Most people will remain asleep. They will cling to numbness, to possessions, to distractions, while rotting in silence inside. But you don't have to be another number in that statistic. You can choose differently. Choose to stop wasting your existence. Choose to awaken. Choose to build a life that feels real, that feels yours. I won't tell you it's easy. It's not. It will hurt. It will demand sacrifice. It will confuse you, but it will also set you free. And there is nothing stronger than a soul that has awakened. Because once you begin to live as who you truly are, you become unshakable. You stop asking for permission. You stop comparing yourself. You stop contorting yourself for the approval of people who will never understand you. So I'll ask you now, what must you release in order to truly live? What lies are you still telling yourself? Share it below. Whether a single sentence, a question, or a confession, writing it down is already a step out of numbness. It's an act of presence, of awakening. And if this video stirred something in you, if it touched a wound or lit a spark, then you must watch the next one. Not because it's a continuation, but because you're ready for more, ready to go deeper, ready to keep walking. And the time to do that is now.